Hello again. Welcome back to the cellar. Move that out of the way. Yeah, bit of a bitty day today. A few little jobs I want to get done. Some which I'm going to show you, but I'm going to do off camera because they're basically things I've been doing recently. Some other bits we're going to have a little bit more of a look at. And then I'm going to push a few trains around because up here still isn't powered. Stick around. Okay, job number one. This little stubber track. Currently just a stubber track stuck down. And if you remember, over here, I have another little stubber track. It's only about it's a 6-inch section. They're the same length. The purpose of which is if something is sitting in this block, we know it might be fouling this slip. So over here, something is sitting in this block, it might be fouling the slip as well with the track that's going to come out here, which will have another point and stuff on it. So little 6-inch section there, which I'm going to get done. Once I've got that done, I'm also, let's angle back up a bit, going to do to this road here, which is platform 3, what I've done to this one here, which is platform 2, which is connect all the fish plates. It's not fixed down yet. As I said before, I've still got some bits on the sensors. I've ordered some parts today, a load of infrared bits and pieces to play with up there. So I'm going to get this one here done. It just means I can push trains in and out. So I'm going to get this little stub done, and then we'll be back. Okay, so that's this little stubber tracking. Incidentally, yeah, you may hear the noise in the background. 3D printering is ongoing. These are the blocks that are going to go around the outside of the turntable. There's 2 here. When they're done, I'll print 2 more, and at some point, I can start playing with the turntable again. Incidentally, while I've got this sort of set up now, put the buffers and so on and so forth in. This is the sort of look we're going to have with the trains. Platforms will start about here, so there'll be a ramp up. So where the B12 is and the end of the coaches will be about the normal end of the platform. Yeah, there's a bit of space here for some point work and some other bits and pieces as well. So that's 5 coaches and a Pacific on the inbound line, and obviously you can see the departure track has a bit more space. I've pinched a coach. I'm doing another painting experiment with it. So yeah, we'll look at that at some point. But we can go down the other end. Excuse me, just catching the legs of the camera stand on things. Yeah, so we've got a little bit of space before the buffers. Some sensors going to go about here and here. So the train's only going to be moving at low speed. It'll hit the sensor, get the stop command, and just glide to a bit of a halt. Probably going to put some lights on the buffer stops. All that's coming up at some point. But that's essentially the track work for the station done. Now the next bit that needs doing, which we are going to have a little look at, I'm going to set up to do this. If I can get down here without destroying the camera again. There is a little bit of soldering that's needed. Now, there's a few bits. The first bit, if we look in here, level you off again. These bits here need doing. This is the printed circuit board sleepers that went in. Tracks rigid either side. They're going to get soldered. Then I'm going to cut them and that'll hold the board join. There are then these little purple dots. Now, this little bit of track here doesn't have a power feed, and it's not going to, it's too small. Neither does this little bit. This bit here does. Now I put the purple, I'm going to solder the fish plates. So that one, then on this point, this one and this one. And eventually there'll be a bit of track here which will get soldered as well. This means this rail up to this point is up to this position is going to be part of the frog of this point. So it'll switch with that. I don't care. I'm quite happy with that. I'm not soldering another little power feed into that bit. This little one here, which I haven't marked, but I actually need to, because I'm using the purple to remind me where to solder. is also going to get soldered. The point has its power feeds, as you saw in the videos where they went in. Power feeds are there. It will be responsible for feeding this little bit of track, so that needs soldering. Over here, this section here has got soldered fish plates, and it's got a power feed on it, which is what the little blue bit is. So I'm going to set up the soldering iron over here, which means sorting out the extension lead and so on and so forth. And we're going to get these rails soldered, then we're going to get them cut, which means I also need to go and find the razor saw. So I should be back in a moment. Okay, set up. Now, the first bit I'm going to do is going to be the PCB sleepers over here. So I need to move you back so you can see what I'm going to be doing. Zoom in a little bit. But ideally not so close that I can't get to it. So what I'm going to be doing to start with is this side here, so a bit of flux along there. I did have a question on what the flux was. Topnic RF 800, flux RF 800, no clean soldering SMD stuff. This is a little bottle. I got it on eBay a couple of years ago now for about £4. It's still on eBay, but it costs a little bit more now. It's like £5. So, yeah. So wet the tip a little bit, just tin that slightly. And we can come in here and apply a bit of solder. And these sleepers don't quite touch the rail. So I am having to come in here and get the solder to bridge to it. Just put a little bit of solder in there, that should help. I'm going to carry on and do the next one. Let me try and do the rail first. Now, the sleepers come pre-tinned, which is quite nice. But I'm just going to shove a bit more into here, because this is supposed to be a structural joint. This is how I'm going to be holding these rails in place when I've cut them. So, this one. Little tip on it, if you do them in order, sort of going left to right or right to left, doesn't really matter which, whichever's easier, the rail is hot. So you spend less time heating the rail, if that makes sense. Over here and do this last one. Yeah, in we go. Redo this one here because it doesn't look very good. There we are. And then it's excuse me a moment. So, sneezing, cut that out in editing. Run the track rubber over it just to sort it out. I'm also, while I'm here, going to do this side one here because I fluxed this as well. So I'll just reposition slightly so you can see this one. Now, hopefully my hand isn't getting in the way too much on this. I realise it probably is a little bit. Yeah, the perils of trying to position a camera somewhere where you can see what I'm doing and I can do what I'm doing, if that makes sense. So yeah. So yeah, just for the pure sake of variety, I'm going the other way. And we'll have a little look at this in a minute, just to see the level of the join. I have had some issues with Pico Track. I mean, the comment I had, or another comment I had rather, on flux is a lot of the time you don't actually need it. The solder's flux cord, which this is, there should be enough flux in there. The reason I tend to add some is because for things like rails, you usually seem to need it. Redo this one. This needs a bit more going into there. The joins aren't particularly tidy, but once they've got a little bit of solder through them, they'll be fine, and a bit of paint on them should also be fine. Now, obviously, if you're not happy soldering points, don't solder them. It's fairly straightforward. If you're not comfortable with that idea, don't solder them. Doesn't really faze me greatly. I've sort of soldered points for a long time. Yeah, just spread that out through that join a little bit more. Should do. And if we scan around and zoom right in, you can sort of see that what we've got here probably could do with a touch more. So let's just flux this one a little bit. It should help. Now, as long as while you're soldering the fish plates, they take solder really nicely. So you shouldn't have any problems with that. Now that, there you go. Doesn't look particularly tidy, however, trains should manage that quite nicely. So, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to go around the other side of the board. I'm going to solder the other side. We'll be back in a minute and then I'll saw it. Okay, so they're in. Now, some of these rails were an absolute swine to solder. This one here, for example, the middle sleeper soldered perfectly. You can see what I'm doing here. This one just decided, nope, big solder blob. That one, big solder blob. Over here, big solder blob, and the rest worked quite nicely. So what I've done is I've put a bit of solder on the inside as well. Next job, razor saw. Now, I'm going to actually have to move you to do this. I thought this side would work. Get some of the rubbish my youngest has left away from the floor, so I'm not standing on it. We shall come around here and have a little look. Apologies for the camera being slightly in the light at this point. And what we're going to do is bring a razor saw in. Now, I've got a side. I do have a piece of wood, which I can sort of use as a bit of a guide to start with. Because ideally I want this to be straight across the join. And I may have mentioned why I don't use a rotary tool for this. Mine vibrates a lot. This produces a much finer cut. And obviously I'm trying to cut all 4 rails at once, so they're all in a line. That, in fact, is just easier than trying to cut them individually. Get this onto here like so. There we are, we're through all the rails, so now we are into cutting the plastic and the cork, which, as you can imagine, a razor saw that'll cut through metal doesn't really have many problems with. So that, check that goes in nicely, it should do. There we go, there we go, there we go. Make sure it cuts all the way through quite nicely. Now, before I do anything else, let's just clean that. I've got a test coach, which obviously rolls over quite nicely. Try on the inside line as well, so the outer line as well. Right. Turn the soldering iron off, don't need that anymore. the big test. Can I separate them? Now, before I can do that, I need to just go down here and move a few things. Basically, I just need to separate the other two boards. And these have obviously got trains on them. It's not going to be a huge problem. Essentially because I'm not separating them far enough for it to be a huge problem. But if I just do this, there's a reason that didn't work. Ah, yeah. They're stuck together at this end. So what I need to do is probably slide the whole thing apart. Now we can scan down here and have a little look at the join. So, yeah, that's... zoom out slightly so we can see it a bit better. So here we have the join. Now there's a little bit of copied X. Just need to shred through there. It's basically an artifact of when I put the top piece down. Same at the far end. I shall just shred through that. And that's these two boards separated. So the next big check is, can I put them back together? This could be a bit more interesting. Trying to do all the boards at once. There we go. And then how do we go? That one goes over nicely. And that one goes over nicely. And that is basically how I'm doing board joins. They should be stuck down fairly firmly. Now I've got the alignment dowels in place. That should help. I can just run that over there and that over there. Just make sure each of the rails is actually secure. They should be. But there we go. That's a track join. So I've got a few more of those to do. I'm going to get on with that. In the meantime, these are finished. So what I'm going to have is obviously eventually 4 of them. There's a little notch to put some sensors in. The turntable will sit in there, and that will lift the turntable lip up to the level of the cork. So I'm going to carry on printing those, and that'll be another video where I go back to playing with the turntable. So I'm going to get on with a bit more soldering. I'll be back in a minute when I've got all the boards sorted out. Okay, so that's it for this one. All the joints are now soldered. All the joints are now cut. The rest of the 3D print stuff is printing. These boards can now be separated again. What this means is I can start wiring it all up and hooking it up. As I've said, this side, there's a little bit more work to do because I need to look at magnets and things. I'm probably going to be doing an order probably next week now. So this is going to go out on Thursday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, I'll do another order. That should give me some bits to play around with over here. And I've got some of the block detection gear. So probably the next one is going to be looking at the block detection. How I do it, why I do it, where it's going to go, what I use. And then we're going to wire some of it up. That'll give me part of the incline board wired. Spoiler alert, I use these things, but not these specific ones. These are for something else. I've got a couple that are already made, which I'm going to fit over there. Yeah, but until then, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for joining me on this journey, so to speak. Although sometimes it does feel more like a death march, because there's no end to it. Hopefully I'm going to be back up running trains again in the next couple of weeks. Like I say, there's a bit more track I want to put in over here. That board is done. So I can now separate all of these. So these two slide that way, that one slides out. Take that board out, and I can have a little look at getting that powered up. And then can't quite run trains yet because there's too much wire loose dangling on things. But I'm going to get over there done. Anyway, that's for the next video. So until then, thank you very much for watching. I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you very much and goodbye.